Next one is Cornelius Keck. Are you there, Cornelius? Novix4000 and what I do in force is Cornelius.
He's muted at the moment. Are you there, Cornelius?
Yes, I am. You should be.
Can hear you now.
Yep. So let's try the screen sharing thing again. Okay, can you see my screen? You cannot see my screen. Let's try this again. Now, come on.
Is it being prevented by?
Don't know yet. Is it saying something? Not yet. Let's try this. Anything? Not yet. Damn it.
No.
Sorry. Okay, I want to share this in Zoom with, let's try that. One, and the suspense is killing me. Anything happening? Yes. That was about bloody cotton picking time. Pardon my French. Okay, here we go. Dr. Ting, you might know this one because you were instrumental in developing it. The Novix NC4000 CPU, single board computer, sold, only not that one, sold in the late 80s in Germany. There was an outfit there that marketed these things, and they came out with a single board computer. Let's discuss the, that UV. We'll get to that. Anyway, we have the CPU and a bunch screen share. Come on. We have a bunch of, would you please get back to my pictures? Can you still see my images?
No, not yet.
Could it be because you got two frames on the screen? Have you got?
No, that's me. That's because I'm also running a laptop to pace myself, so that I'm not running away with the presentation.
Okay.
Because it has happened that there is significant lag as far as Zoom itself goes. So we have a CPU, we have a bunch of memory chips, 2K each. We have firmware and EPROM, that's a concern. And at the bottom of the screen, where is it? Underneath the EPROM, more memory chips. The reason why I'm messing with this is I'm into old computers, software archaeology, for instance, reviving old stuff. Now this puppy still works. The CPU has a 16-bit wide data bus. No, it doesn't have one, it has 3. 2 of these chips appear on the right. Oops. 2 of these chips up here on the right are constitute a 16-bit wide return stack. The next 2 constitute a 16-bit wide data stack. and the two memory chips at the bottom are 16-bit wide program memory. In other words, this particular CPU has 3 address and 3 data buses on the chip. Beyond that, it has 4,000 gates. It's a marvel in simplicity, no other way to put it. Let me turn off this thing. So that should keep my screen on a little bit longer. Go ahead.
Cornelius, this is a clock of 4 megahertz, or?
I think this thing is 8. And if I remember correctly, it's been, is this thing mask programmed or an FPGA? I forgot, Dr. Ting knows, doesn't matter.
It's a gate array. It's a gate array.
So anyway, it's very simple. It's a very simple system. And as we, all the memory is static because this little puppy, if I remember correctly, it runs at 8 megahertz. At 8 megahertz, your memory timing is aggressive. Dynamic memory in the 80s wasn't fast enough, especially since you had to shift, you have to shunt the address into a typical 4164, 41256 dynamic memory chip, one of the go-to pieces at the time. You had to shunt the address in then 2 pieces as row address and column address. That took too much time. Besides, you would have, it also would have required adding refresh circuitry. So this is all static memory and it runs pretty fast. This thing still works. It took me a little bit to break into it because I forgot that you had to type a letter B so that this thing could measure its initial bit rate. Instruction set is interesting because it's unencoded. The parts and pieces of an instruction, where is my browser? Yeah, that. I thought about that. If we look at the instructions, every instruction is 16-bit because that's what our data bus is wide. And each and every bit of an instruction does something in the CPU. There is no microcode. This is a hard-coded CPU. Whatever you put into an instruction word does things in the CPU. If you take a look here at bit number 5 that is labeled R, that thing is present on most instructions, but not on any kind of jump. Like if the highest bit of an instruction is 0, the rest is an address, you go there. If it's not a jump instruction, then bit 5 is the return bit. You get a return from subroutine as part of every instruction, which means your return of subroutine not being an extra operation executes in 0 CPU cycles. Yeah, this thing still works, but the problem that we have with this are these 2 chips with a green sticker. They're EPROMs. I found this thing, or yeah, I unearthed this thing last year in my mother's attic in Germany. German attics are nice places. They're very constant temperature due to heavy insulation, and they tend to be very dry. So this thing survived 25 years in storage just fine. In a dark box, so no UV. Unfortunately, EPROMs, like many other things these days, have shelf life. Shelf life of EPROMs is limited, and there are rumors that after 10 years, you start losing bits. That's not good, because this particular, these particular EPROMs, I have yet to find a dump, a hex dump or binary dump of these on the web. So once they go, this thing no longer comes up. So the very first thing that needs to be done to the system, apart from keeping it temperature controlled, humidity controlled, and in the dark, is to replace these two EPROMs with EPROMs of some or something of similar access time, dump the contents, and put the contents somewhere else. Once that's done, replace them, and, well, get this thing working with the replacements. One could, of course, buy an EPROM programmer to do this, but where's the fun in that? When an Arduino can do the same thing, it has TTL level output, TTL level I/O, which is just what these memory chips require. So we build ourselves a little adapter that plugs into Omega 256 and see what happens. While looking for documentation for this chip, I came across, where's my email? That's not it. We want this. I came across a simulator which where the CPU part is reasonably well written. Apparently, Chalmers University, I probably mispronounced that, so sorry about that, in Sweden, they had some folks at the end of the 90s that, amongst others, re-implemented the 4016 in an FPGA. So there apparently is a pin description for this thing. And as part of the exercise, they wrote a simulator. So the other goal is to not only resurrect the real hardware and then drive it sparingly, because that's what you do with old timers, only on the weekends. The other is get the simulator working. The simulator is written in Borland C++. The Novix part is very straightforward. C++ as it was at the end of the 90s. Getting that to work on a Raspberry Pi or any other Linux platform is, well, if you can read compiler warnings, it's an absolute no-brainer, no rocket science. The support code is a different animal because it's geared towards Borland C++, ancient, unsupported, and, well, Windows only, and with Windows graphical user interface, which is highly limiting. So the idea is to replace all that with something that you can drive from the command line in any kind of Linux, Unix environment. The other problem with that is the comments are in Swedish, and Google Translate, oh yeah, the comments are in Swedish, variable names are in Swedish, so it's not exactly self-documenting. And Google Translate does not do a very good job with Swedish to English, especially if there are UTF-8 or other non-standard ASCII characters in there. So I've been translating and redocumenting this thing to get that working. You might want to ask, why on earth am I dinking around with this old stuff? The answer is simple. As it was mentioned a couple of minutes ago, modern stuff has gotten rather complicated, rather heavy on software. And it's getting to the point that having to learn yet another third-party package, third-party technology with tons of dependencies included just to get something simple working is a waste of my time, especially since I'm in the later years of my life, and yet another gimmick to get into yet another gimmick to get stuff done gets old. These old pieces of hardware are very rewarding to look into as long as you have something to get them working. And this puppy is a prime target, especially since there are very few of these around. One word of warning.
Cornelius, it
Yes.
seems strange to me that this board eventually was sold in large quantities. I don't think there are so many.
There aren't. They are not. They are rare. I think I got this thing back in Germany when I was still living in Kiel from Ulrich Hoffmann, who's done a ton of things in Forth. And until he brought that up, I don't think I've ever heard about it. I have not seen any other since. This thing is rare.
It was the dream for many of us all around the world. No, we saw the Novix on the magazines, and
Yep.
everybody was, wow, this is the future. This is the CPU, no, on that time.
Yep. Yes, we were, because other stuff wasn't fast. And this thing executed in one CPU operation in one clock cycle at 8 megahertz. An 8286 or 386 at 25 couldn't keep up. I mean, it screamed. It was fast enough that it could generate a regular composite video signal on some of its I/O pins in software. It could generate regular composite video in software. It was fast enough for that. The only limitation was that it didn't have enough space to render a complete screen. It could only do a couple of lines at the top of the screen, but hey, video generated in software. Try to do that at the end of the 80s. Now, the idea is to resurrect this and get the simulator working to the point that you can at least command line drive this, because with that, everybody can have one. The simulator, again, it's in 99. It was written in C at the end of the 90s. So it itself looks fairly benign, especially since, as I said earlier, you don't have to do much to simulate this thing. Everything is directly encoded on the CPU, so every instruction tells you exactly what it wants you to do. There are no address translation tables, no variable length instruction words where some operations are 1 byte, others are 4 bytes long, and you have to figure out what you're looking at. Multiple step decode. Oh, just think about what that does to performance. So you just have to microcode things. Yeah, then your microcode gets more complicated. Your CPU gets more complicated. And oh, did I mention that you have to verify your microcode, which gets expensive. So these old RISC CPUs are very interesting beasts to me. So that's why I would like to get this working again, so that I can play with it without having to fear that it signs out on me, A. B, make it so that others can play with it. There is, interestingly enough, on GitHub an implementation of the RTX 2000 CPU, which looks a lot like this thing, but, well, it's a little bit more evolved, so it's on my list of things to do to get this working again. Were it not for this old stuff, for these old things, or recently, the ability to run forth on a Linux platform in form of GForth or an Arduino, I probably would have passed this by because it's not old enough, it's not ancient enough, it's not primitive enough. But since I have this old thing, that's what I'm doing. Questions, please.
Yes, I have a question. You said the EEPROM is losing bytes with age. You don't have any error correction, ECC, for example, to preserve?
No, this is old school code. Back in the day, error correcting memory was available at the end of the 80s. Error correcting memory got in high-end servers, things that even today cost a boatload of money. These basically consumer grade or hobbyist grade CPUs, they don't have any error correction on the inside. At the end of the 80s, we weren't there yet. We by now have all kinds of internal protection to make sure that things don't go sideways, and even error correcting memory has become cheap and affordable. If you don't want to buy cutting edge, try an older server like, oh good grief, give me something, like an older Spark, a 5440 or something equally big, has error correcting memory. Even an old Ultra 60, by now easily 18 plus years old, will tell you exactly when a memory chip somewhere goes bad, and it will tell you under Solaris at least which socket your bad memory is in. Back in the 80s, we didn't have that. Especially hobbyist boards, there is no error correction. So bit flips in older chips are a thing. They happen. The older they are, the more runtime they have on them, the more the more runtime they have, the more. Oh, can I download this?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Chrome wouldn't let me do this. Let's grab this really quick.
Yeah, Cornelius, I would like to emphasize that it's very important to conserve the binary image that are in the prompts, because on the web you find the source code of CM4, that is the software that runs on the board, but I wasn't able to get to the binaries even with extensive search. So it's very valuable. I wouldn't experiment with the chips with an own programmer or whatever to extract this, but make sure to get the files or the images first and then continue.
Yeah, the idea is, I have a similar other problem here. I have some old Sparks, and these old Sparks, the real-time clocks on these things, they go bad. There's an internal battery in these things. So after a couple of years, they lose their mind realistically. I pulled mine because the idea of having an old battery in an old computer that might start to leak or do other nasty things does not appeal. Right now, since the battery is pin compatible with the same sort of static memory chip that coincidentally this board uses, you can pull the battery chip and put a regular static RAM in there. But the idea is to replace this chip with an EEPROM. Never mind the real-time clock in there. Even a Raspberry Pi pulls time off the web at startup. And let's face it, NTP servers are not rocket science, and neither are the clients. So the idea would be to replace that particular chip with an EEPROM. So before I start messing with this CPU, there's going to be a ton of verification of the programmer before I try anything, including burning my own EEPROMs. Because that's the other thing. If I get a bad part from China hardware, you can buy an EEPROM programmer out there for what, $50? It's USB driven. It has a zero insert force text tool or 3M socket with a little lever on the side that you can get your chips in and out of it easily. It has one of those on there. It has a ton of hardware out there. It's dirt cheap. I think.
Can I just add one thing? Can I just say, I published a computer kit back in the 80s, and there's several versions of it out there, and we have a number of ROMs that are from that period, EEPROMs, 2716s, I think. And we've basically been doing the software preservation on those, and we noticed a strange thing happening with some of the beeping noises. They came out flat because we had frequency tables, and we noticed that there'd been some corruption that had happened. So I can vouch for 35-year-old EEPROMs. You might get 1 or 2 bits lost, and you might get worse, or you might get nothing. You might be perfectly fine. But that is an example of some corruption of a 30-plus-year-old ROM. They do have bit decay in them occasionally.
Yeah, and with this old puppy, I've gotten lucky because it still boots. I can I powered it on. I hooked it up to a Pi with a USB to serial cable on the Pi. You don't attach to the console of a Pi, of course not. No, you get something extra. Then a null modem cable to this thing worked like a charm. Just took me a little bit to figure out what I had to type in for this thing to report. But it came up, it executed commands. I could walk the dictionary. Cool. Oh yeah, the power supply is getting a little bit hot. That runs on two.
Can you just capture the dump then? Write a dump routine and just capture what the dump routine will output. You get a hex dump of the binary.
Yes, that's the other idea, that I basically bring it up long enough with a fan pointed at the power. It's a linear power supply. I built it myself because I didn't get one. Anyway, so yes.
Okay, I have to present the next participant, if you don't mind. Is Holland Ford.
Yeah, one last thing. If you want to know more about this or recommendations, comments, just shove them into the Facebook group or message me on Facebook.
Yep. Thank you.
I'll drop the links to this stuff in there later today.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank
you very much. Please stop sharing, Cornelius, so we go to the next.